Deferred from the City Council meeting on 11/17/15, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 39, Personnel Regulations and Benefits, Retirement and Pensions, Section 39.036, application to appointive officers.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. David will put up a short explanation here of exactly what the ordinance change would do on a technical basis. We've talked about this and talked about it and talked about it. And all I wanted to accomplish with this is to put everybody on an equal footing, allow people that are willing to take some risk, if you will, moving forward in their career to be able to do it, and to put everybody as I said, on equal standings. I am prepared to answer any questions you might have, and I'll be happy to do that as we go along. But as you can see, the amendment to this would be, the only thing is in blue. Anyone holding an appointed office on or before December 31st, 2015, who at the time of his appointment was part of civil service, will have what we call a bump-back provision, allowing them to go back to their old job if they are removed for any reason from the job that they were appointed to. We have searched over the entire state of South Dakota. We find nobody in government that allows this anyplace, and it just doesn't make any sense to allow some people to have an advantage, if you will, those coming in from outside not having that, and those on the inside, if you will, being able to have that advantage. And so the harm that can come from bringing somebody or putting somebody back into their old position are many times insurmountable. And we've had some of the instances like that in Sioux Falls. So to take care of some of those problems and to put people on a even playing field, I would urge you to support this motion, and I would move its approval.
Councilor Rolfing, before I go to that motion, I do have to ask, is there anybody in the audience who wanted to speak to this item? Welcome, sir. Thank you.
My name is Greg Boris, and I have no skin in this game. But in a previous life, I was a school principal here in Sioux Falls. And I also negotiated the master contract for school administrators in Sioux Falls with the school board. And we had a bump-back provision in there. So, and it was litigated in circuit court and the state Supreme Court. So I would disagree with Councilor Rolfing that it doesn't exist here in the state. It does. And it's not in the same form as this, but there are bump-back provisions in this state. Thank you.
Mr. Morris, thank you.
I stand corrected.
Is there anybody else who wanted to speak to this item in the audience? Very good. Councilor, I will now let you make that motion.
I would move approval of the motion as printed.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Rolfing has made a motion to approve the item as printed, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Any discussion? Councilor Jameson.
Yes, I've got an amendment to propose. I might need a little help with it, but there were some additional words added. But essentially, I want to add that an appointed officer within fire or police or any other appointed officer. I want to add that, but there's another paragraph here that the city attorney and the HR director were wishing to add, so I'll add the text. I think it's okay. This provision does not apply to any appointed officer who has been removed from appointed office for any reason that would warrant a demotion, suspension, or discharge of any employee who is subject to this chapter. That's my amendment.
Second, Erickson.
Councilor Jameson, thank you. Councilor Jameson being a motion to amend the main motion, and it was seconded by Councilor Erickson. Councilor Jameson, did you have any discussion on this item?
Sure, if I could. The intentions are to keep police and fire out of the political process of what the appointed position creates. In both of those divisions, police and fire, all along their careers, they are encouraged to rise through the ranks, to do all the extra training, to do everything they can to be promoted, and stay within. And it creates loyalty to our departments. And it's an environment that we've fostered for many years. And the last thing we would want to have happen is a new mayor come in and appoint a new chief out of a group of somebody who was just appointed maybe 2 years ago, and all of a sudden have them removed. Well, if I've said that quite correctly, let me start over. If, for instance, today, if somebody were to decide to retire and leave, and the current mayor needed to appoint this new chief from either one of these divisions, but that person had maybe several years to go until they could retire. All of a sudden now, that person has to consider the ramifications of taking this position, perhaps only to be replaced by a new incoming mayor. And all of a sudden, they've got to think about a few more things than just whether this is the right step for them. They've got a retirement, a pension, they've got all kinds of considerations of ending their career somewhere else. I want to safeguard those individuals and those offices. I just can't see them getting threatened by the political nature of the appointed position. So I think they just need some extra protection.
Counselor, thank you. Counselor Urbanbach.
Two things.
Counselor Urbanbach, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Counselor Karsky. Counselor Urbanbach. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'll go Counselor Karsky.
Two things. One, I believe the two pieces of the Jameson amendment really are two separate amendments. I would hope that we would either friendly amendments split those out, or if I could do that, I'm seeing head nods. If I could, I would make a friendly amendment to split those up so you have two amendments, so that we're only considering at this time the first part, which is the keeping the police and fire out of this. And then if I'm, okay, so that's my friendly amendment. I need a second on that.
Yep. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so
Thank you.
now we've got a friendly amendments, and what we're doing is we're only going to discuss the first part, and that's appointed officer within fire, police, or any other appointed officer.
Then
Counselor Urbanbach.
may I speak to that? Then?
Please.
Then my concern would be that that we're assuming that this is a political appointment, and I'm really concerned in a community like Sioux Falls that's some sort of danger for people. I don't believe that we need to have this exception. I fully support the amendment, the original amendment. I don't believe that we need to make these exceptions because I don't believe that political nature exists, and I don't want it to exist. And I think as well, and I've said this before, that everyone in this community, everyone that works for this city is highly qualified and can work anywhere in this country and do very well. And that I think that we have exceptional people here, and they don't need to be worried that this is some kind of, like it's some kind of political whatever. It's not.
Counselor Karsky.
I'm going to support the amendment the way it is for police and fire. I wish we didn't have to go here right now. Unlike Councilor Urbanbach, I strongly believe that these can become political appointments over time, and they will become favors or rewards for favors done throughout the political process. Our city employees work a long time, and to get to that position of a management, and the only thing that let's face it, they work hard for a pension, and they jeopardize that pension if they don't have the right amount of time in when they take that appointment. I'm going to vote for the amendment. I just don't think it goes far enough. I wish it went further.
Counselor Anderson Jr.
Yeah, Bill O'Toole, come up, please.
Bill?
Thank you, Bill. This was sort of deferred a little bit so that we could get an opinion from you on this bump back. Could you give us a little bit of history on this bump back and how this may affect people applying for those director positions?
Well, thank you for bringing me into the fray and that discussion, Counselor. I appreciate that. That provision's been in place for quite some time. Obviously, it was put into place to provide some protection for those individuals who carried a career in the city of Sioux Falls through the civil service process and then made the decision to take in a leadership position in an appointed capacity, and if removed, had some level of protection from making that decision to go that route. That's the history. Again, here before I was with the city of Sioux Falls, and I've been here for almost 20 years. In terms of, what was your second part of your question?
I guess what would be the impact if this passes? Do you believe that this will inhibit some of our employees from giving up some of those securities that they have as civil service employees?
It's a difficult question to answer, and I believe, and I wasn't here, and I think the respective fire chief and police chief have expressed some concerns about that very issue. So, and I've heard some of those concerns as well, given the rank structure of those organizations. I've not been approached by others in that regard to express that concern or whether that would hinder. But I think depending on who you might ask, you might get a different answer. Because it becomes it becomes a personal decision or issue for somebody. Some may say it would have no impact. Some might say it might. I don't know the answer to that. I didn't survey everybody who is currently sitting in that role today. I can only tell you from my personal experience, it wouldn't have made a difference for me in my decision-making process whether that bump back provision was there or not. I obviously wanted a leadership opportunity, and I was willing to take the risk that went with that decision. And I'd hate to venture a guess for somebody else in that regard, Counselor, so I apologize if I'm not directly answering your question.
Then last thing, right now as it sits, what would a city employee moving up to a director's position give up to move up into that position? Are they?
Yeah, they're giving up, in essence, their civil service status, which affords them certain protections as a civil service employee. In other words, if someone were to be removed from office, there are just cause provisions that would need to be met to remove those individuals. And as an appointed official, you don't have those protections.
Okay, thank you.
Good job. I'm going to go to Councilor Rolfing first, and then I'll come back to Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. I've heard a couple of three things here today, and I wanted to just talk about those. First one is obviously talking about exempting fire and police. My question to those people would be, number one, how do other cities then get people from within to even apply for those appointed positions? We're the only one in this area other than the city, and I thank you for pointing that out, Greg. Wasn't it great that the city did, or the school system did have that? I did not check with the school system, I apologize. But how do other cities like Rapid City, Rochester, Omaha, Minneapolis, you name it, move people up within their ranks if they don't have this? And my contention would be that they have people who are ready, willing, and able, knowing their strengths and their weaknesses, that they can do the job and that they will be okay in that situation. And I would point out also that many of our department heads that are not covered by this situation have assistants or deputies. The city attorney has deputy city attorneys. City clerk has an assistant. Fire director, our finance director has assistant director of finance. Health department has assistants. Library has assistant directors. Park and Rec have assistant directors. Planning and building service has assistants. Those are just to name a few. As they have assistant directors. So in that situation, I would just say that, those people are in the same kind of situation. They're there. And those directors should be able to do that whole thing. The political appointment thing, I believe if one of these people have it, in other words, if our director of public works does not have it, or, I'm sorry, let's go this way. If our police chief and our fire chief have it, why don't we give it to anybody who is appointed to civil, or from anywhere, give them this bump back position and say, hey, if you don't make it here, we'll find another job for you someplace. Because that's literally what we're doing with fire and police. And not that I don't respect fire and police, I hope that doesn't come across this way. I just think when someone takes on a management, this type of CEO type position, they take on the responsibility and the risks that go with it. Thank you.
Counselor Jameson.
Thank you. I think we're really discussing the amendment as I would understand it, right? That's
Right.
our first vote. You know, we do have the two chiefs here, and I don't think they're here just to watch to see what we do. I think they've got a position and an opinion. It's a tough spot for them to be in, to come up and talk about it. I've maybe put them in that spot, but I think it's justified for their safety, our own, the community's safety and protection. But if they were so willing, I would encourage them to come forward and give us any input.
Good evening, Matt Burns, Police Chief. I guess in regards to the specifics of this, we have not seen this as a particular problem in the police department that I'm aware of in the last 20 years. I know that there's a possibility that it could happen. In fact, when Chief Barthel was appointed to his position, the chief at that time was actually returned to the rank of captain. There was not a specific issue. He was actually put in charge of the, I guess, the construction, the design, if you will, of our current law enforcement center, and that worked out very well until he chose to retire. So I guess if I'm asked to provide a specific, that would be my experience in that regard. As far as, I do believe there could be a potential chill effect on a person eligible to take the appointment, if so offered by a mayor, just for the fact that it has been offered here. I don't see that as a huge barrier, but I see it as a possibility where a person who is eligible and receive that appointment would have to think about it. It might enter their calculus if they had children of school age and had raised their family here for the entirety of their career, might not want to put that at risk, and might not want to put the fact that they could retire at full retirement at risk if there was a change, be it on merit or for the political reasons. The mere fact that the political reason is a possibility would likely enter someone's calculus. I would think that it would.
Chief, did you want to comment on this as well?
Jim Sedaris, Fire Chief. I agree. I've been on the department for 32 years. I've seen 2 bump backs happen. I was a young firefighter at the time, much younger than I am now. And when those bump backs happened, part of what happened is they moved back to the lower rank. If there would be a problem, there wasn't at that time. If there would be a problem, there is a disciplinary process for a director to disciplinary action against someone who's not performing properly. I agree. I think we would have, I would say, more than a chilling effect. When I've talked to my people, they're saying family first, which we teach our firefighters all the way up through the ranks, that they would have to say, I could have to go through potentially 2 mayors, 3 mayors. Do I want to put my family at risk if it doesn't work out? There isn't another fire department in town. There's not another police department in town. We're a limited skill set in that role that we would be going to another city. There was a mention of what do other cities do. I don't know if they have the bump back, but I do know that if you want to go outside, you have the ability now to open it up. But other departments who have not had people step up have gone to outside chiefs, and what happens is you get a rolling chief effect, meaning Rapid City was brought up. Rapid City went to a chief from Omaha. He stayed for a couple of years, and he went from Rapid City then to Milwaukee. Sioux City ended up going to an outside chief. That chief stayed for a while and then jumped to a larger city. Watertown was brought up. Watertown also brought a chief in from West Coast, stayed for a couple of years, went back to the West Coast as almost a pad for a resume. One thing about Sioux Falls Fire is we're an exceptional department in the sense that a chief were to come here from the outside, if no one wanted to step up and take that, it's a great resume padding built in because we're one of 35 departments that are ISO 1 and accredited. People would want to come here to be chief only to go somewhere else and jump up. I think we would not have people step up readily because of the fear of losing their job. And it could happen because of a different mayor. We'd have to look at that. So I think it would have an effect. Again, it's not that they don't want to step up, but they would have to look at how does this affect their family, how does this affect their employability, and they're going to leave a department they love when they could stay at a lower rank and still be happy with the job that they love to do. Our people love the fire department. I don't know that they'd want to risk that if there's a roll of the dice every 4 years. We're getting, no offense, Mayor, every 4 years we get a new mayor. You don't know what's going to happen. And we have had changes in fire chiefs before. I hope that helps give my opinion on it. I'd like to see the bump back just for that, if you will, a parachute if things don't work out. It is a major difference coming from a chief officer, which I was, to becoming the fire chief. There's a lot of things you don't see, a lot of things you don't understand, and it's a pretty steep learning curve, so some people might not want to step up to that and yet stay in the department.
Chief, thank you. Yes, Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And I just, I don't necessarily have a question for you, but something that really set in my mind of why fire and police, they have such a limited skill set. When you're talking about Minneapolis or some of the other cities, if I leave Minneapolis, I've got St. Paul and a lot of the other communities that I can quickly maybe apply to that I'm not going to have to uproot my family. As a mom with small children myself, that would definitely play into our family's decision, and we just wouldn't want to risk that and risk having to leave. Our family's all located here too. We wouldn't want to risk that. That's important to us and important to stay into a community, and just not having that option for additional employment with fire police, I think is important, recognizing that specific skill set and why I think it's so important. And the ranking system is much different. You know, as it's a military style type ranking system as
Correct.
you move through the ranks. And my fear is if they're not taken out, what is that going to say to an entry-level officer? Are they really, really going to keep driving to get to the top knowing, oh, I have to time it right? As much as we say we don't think it's political, and maybe it hasn't been so far, there's that risk as that seat changes place potentially every 4 to 8 years. And it just, you know, you don't want it to be, but it can be. And so I think that we need to protect, especially that fire and police area, with knowing our community is so unique that we don't have large cities that somebody could commute to if that was an option. And when you've worked so hard and invested your career in those two areas and not having really a lot of other options, you might not take that risk. And then what are we losing out on a community? The civil service is much, much different than a traditional free enterprise area. It's just different. So I hope that my colleagues here will support this amendment.
And you are correct. Right now, there are no chief openings in the upper Midwest. You'd be looking at Texas, West Coast, East Coast, Florida.
Councilor Kelly.
First of all, I'd like to point out that Chief
thank you.
Sedaris and Chief Burns have nothing to lose in this situation here. This amendment, any of the amendments that we're discussing this evening will not affect them. So I do greatly appreciate the fact that you both stepped forward. And as much as I dislike consistencies within a system, I'm inclined to support Councilor Jameson's amendment, and for this reason. And it is, as Chief Sedaris mentioned, there's not another fire department or police department in the city. In fact, there's probably few in the country that hold a candle to what we have here in Sioux Falls. As an individual, I would hate the thought of leaving the town that I grew up in. I dearly love it, as I'm sure you do as well, and many of your personnel do. And so for that reason, I will support the amendment.
Thanks.
Councilor Erickson, or no, I'm sorry, Councilor Erpenbach.
Shouldn't have put the girls together, I guess.
No, it's all right. Councilor Erpenbach.
The ease. this goes back then for me. It goes back to and again, no offense. You know that I support police and fire to the nth degree, and you know, I have public service in my background and my family. But I don't understand then how they are different. Why then are we saying, you know what, all the rest of you guys, we're gonna let you sink or swim. But these guys are super special, so we're gonna make this, not gonna make this change for them. I think it's all or none. I really think we need to grow up about this and do all or none.
A roll call, oh, sorry.
Yes, I have.
I'm going to go back to Councilor Rolfing, and then I'll go back to Councilor Erickson. Councilor Rolfing?
Couple other comments if I could, and I'm going to reiterate that I support the police and the fire. You guys know that. Done it throughout my career here on the council, and I want to continue that, and I will. But when you come down to it, to take those two divisions or two departments out, people make decisions based on living in Sioux Falls and not taking a promotion or not moving on a daily basis in this town. I'll guarantee it. Somebody gets a promotion or a job offer in Kansas City or Kadoka or something like that they can make more money on. They make the decision many times to stay in Sioux Falls and not take that risk of going out there. That's their decision. But what we've done with fire and police is said, don't worry about it. Because if you, for some reason, can't make it there, or a political appointment comes along, you get your old job back. Makes no sense. Makes no sense. We put a limit on that situation. We've given them an out, if you will. Others have that same decision. You know, it happens every day in business. So I would just urge you to look at this, like as Councilor Erpenbach said, this is really all or nothing, because it is not fair to the ones who are not getting this. And then I have one other thing. Could I ask Jim David to come up, or for Councilor Jameson to explain the amendment itself, because it appears to me that when it reads any appointed officer within fire or police or any other appointed officer holding an appointed office on or before December 31st, who at the time of his or her appointment term was in civil service or upon his removal from appointment office, be returned to his, to me that sounds like everybody gets it. Not just fire and police, it means everybody. Maybe our council could explain how that wording is.
If I may, Mayor, and Councilor Rolfing, notice after where the language says any appointed officer within fire or police, comma, so you separate that, or is a disjunctive word, meaning, you know, another subset, any other appointed officer holding an appointed office on or before December 31st. So you have to look at it as two subsets. So you have anyone who currently is there, or any appointed officer within fire or police.
Yeah, so they're both the same.
Provision.
They're both the same. So that means that everybody gets a bump back. Okay, I'm not understanding it. I'll trust you to.
It's two different camps. So if you are a police or fire appointed officer under this amendment, even if you're appointed after December 31st of 2015, you would have bump back rights. If you are any appointed officer holding an appointed office on or before December 31st of this year, then the bump back applies.
I defer to my English teacher. She agrees with you.
Very good. Councilor Erickson, yes.
This is the only thing I'm going to say, and then I have a point of order, just since it was repeated. We are talking about a separate skill set. We do not have any other fire or police, very limited fire or police opportunity, and that's my concern. So my point of order is, Councilor Erpenbach asked to have this amendment separated there. Are we voting on separating them, or are we voting on the first sentence?
It was a friendly amendment.
First, and then we'll vote on Councilor Jameson's.
No, it was just a friendly amendment, just a procedural
We don't have
thing.
to make a motion for it.
Correct.
Thank
Right,
you
we
for the
just put 'em up.
clarification. That's it, thank you.
So what we're going to do, council, is we're going to vote on the first amendment, which added the words appointed officer within fire or police, comma, or any other appointed officer, that's what we're voting on right now. So a roll call vote on the amendment, please.
Councilmembers Anderson,
No.
Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
No.
Jameson,
Yes.
Karsky,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes?
Rolfing,
No.
Staggers.
Yes.
That is passed 5-3. There was another amendment that Councilor Jameson brought up, and it was through a friendly amendment. It became a second recommended amendment, and that is called, "This provision does not apply to any appointed officer who has been removed from a point of office for any reason that would warrant a demotion, suspension, or discharge of any employee who is subject to this chapter." Councilor Jameson, did you want to discuss that item, sir? No. Okay.
Would he explain it?
Councilor Jameson, would you mind explaining it to the rest of the team?
I will leave it to the city attorney if I could.
David?
What this would do would be an exception to the bump back right, where if you are removed under the current provision, even if it's for misconduct, you have bump back rights. This has always been probably a loophole in this ordinance. And if bump back rights are in place, they can only be if you're removed for non-performance issues. So if you have a removal where you are removed for a performance issue, you do not get bump back rights. So that's the intent of that language.
A
Comment?
Yes, Councilor Karsky?
It'd be nice if we were voting on this as a standalone instead of the bump back, because this would remove the provision that allows the bump back instead of removing the bump back in its entirety. If this was the only thing we were voting on, it would make more sense to me as a counselor, because it protects those people, but it does not protect them if they're being terminated or demoted for cause. So I'm gonna support this amendment, but I wish, my comment is I wish this was the entire reason we were voting on this, because it would eliminate this entire discussion right here, right now. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Rolfing?
To our Robert's Rule of Order person, I kind of like, without thinking it through completely, but I kind of like what you're saying there, Councilor Karsky. Would there be a way that we could substitute for the, put a substitute motion in, striking the first part of that in yellow and adding the second part as this total amendment, and then that way it would be, or would there be a better way to do that, Mr. Fifley? Yep.
You could do a substitute motion, Counselor, where you're substituting that new language in place because you have not adopted anything as amended yet. You have not taken the underlying.
So then I would like to do a substitute amendment that begins with any,
Substitute motion.
or substitute motion.
Beg your pardon, yes.
Yes, thank
substitute
you.
motion.
Substitute motion that reads, any one holding an appointed office on or before December 31st, 2015, who at the time of his or her appointment thereof was in a civil service of the city shall, upon his or her removal from a point of office, be returned to his or her former position and pay as an employee of the city, and the period of his or her tenure as an appointed officer shall be included in his or her civil service rights. This provision does not apply to any appointed officer who has been removed from a point of office for any reason that would warrant a demotion, suspension, or discharge of any employee who is subject to this chapter. End.
I'm going to second that, but it's going to take time to think about it to make sure the intent of what we're doing here is what we want to have done.
Clarification? Maybe, Are you just taking out?
Counselor Ermack, if I could just have you just hold on just a little bit, please.
If you've not done your job,
At this point, counselors, you've taken out, with a substitute motion, you've taken out an amendment for police and fire, so that exception is gone,
right.
if that's your intent. So, in essence, it's creating only the grandfather exception being anyone who's currently in a point of office, but it would not go beyond that, if I'm getting, that's your intent. So the crux of the whole action would be that bump back rights would only be in place for those who are currently appointed officers, and that they would not have bump back rights if they are removed for job performance or other specific grounds.
If I may, Mayor, then I should have removed the honor before December 31st, 2015, and then that would apply to everyone.
Yeah.
With no time limit.
Your intent then going forward, Counselor, would mean that there would always be bump back rights.
Correct. There would always be
Always.
bump back rights, except for being removed for cause.
That's your new intent with your
That's the
substitute.
new intent.
Mr. Mayor, I have a,
Can I respectfully request that you defer this item,
I
Counselor?
think that would be good.
Move to defer to 2 weeks from tonight.
Second.
And there's been a motion to defer and it has been seconded. However, if you can just give me a second here, please.
December 15th.
I didn't hear you.
Pick a date.
Say that date.
The first would be the 16th. 15th? Yeah, 15, 14.
here's your risk, is if it's deferred again, though, okay, so everything else.
There's been a motion to defer this item, and it has been seconded. And in discussing this with our legal counsel, he said this then trumps all the other discussion, the other amendments, the substitute motions, that the motion to defer basically overcomes all the others. And so that is all we're voting on right now. So if you'd like to continue this discussion at a later date, then you would vote yes. And if you want to continue the discussion now, you'll vote no. So there has been a motion to defer. It has been seconded. Councilor Urbanbach.
The clerk has asked me to say the day that it's being deferred to, and that would be December 15th.
There's been a motion to defer this item to December 15th. Is the secondary person okay with
Yes.
that? And second, that has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Anderson,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Karsky,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes?
Staggers.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Thank you, City Council.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go. Come on, let's go. Come on.